Hey, ladies and gentlemen, friends from across Europe and beyond, imagine waking up one morning to find that a decision made thousands of miles away could affect the medicine you rely on, the treatment your loved ones need, and the very stability of global healthcare. Today, we are witnessing such a moment, a ripple from India that is sending waves across continents, touching governments, hospitals, businesses, and families alike. But let me tell you something. Moments like this are never just challenges. They are opportunities. Opportunities to rethink, to innovate, to build resilience, and to lead. The story I'm about to share with you is not only about tariffs, trade, or diplomacy. It is about how we respond when the world shifts beneath our feet, about how vision, courage, and collaboration can turn disruption into progress. So stay with me, because what we explore today is more than news. It is a lesson for every leader, every entrepreneur, and every citizen who believes that in times of change, the bold do not wait for the future, they create it. This is a journey through the complexities, the reactions, and the opportunities sparked by India's bold move on US medicines. And it will inspire you to see challenges not as obstacles, but as the beginnings of something greater. Let's dive in. India's recent move to impose significant import duties on US-made pharmaceuticals has taken both markets and policymakers by surprise. The phrase tax bomb captures the suddenness and scale of this decision. Until now, trade in pharmaceuticals between India and the United States benefited from relatively predictable tariff structures. This allowed importers, distributors, and healthcare systems to plan costs and supply flows with a degree of certainty. However, the new policy introduces substantial tariffs that directly increase the landed cost of these medicines when they arrive in India. For American pharmaceutical companies, this measure represents a sharp escalation in trade barriers, which could impact their competitiveness in one of the world's fastest growing medicine markets. India's healthcare sector, already a complex mix of public provision and private enterprise, relies on a variety of imported drugs, especially high-end and specialty treatments that are often produced in the United States. These include cutting-edge cancer drugs, advanced biologics, and certain patented medications that India does not yet manufacture at scale. The tariff hike means these drugs will now be more expensive for Indian importers, hospitals, and ultimately patients. This cost increase has immediate implications for pricing and accessibility. Private hospitals and clinics may pass on higher costs to patients, potentially putting life-saving treatments out of reach for many. In the public healthcare sector, budget constraints could lead to reduced procurement of certain high-cost drugs, indirectly affecting patient care. The reasons behind India's decision are layered. On one side, it could be seen as a push to encourage local pharmaceutical manufacturing and reduce reliance on foreign imports, aligning with India's broader Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India policy. On the other, it may also be a strategic response to ongoing trade tensions or disputes with the US over other goods and services. By targeting an industry as critical as pharmaceuticals, India is signaling its willingness to assert economic leverage in negotiations. The ripple effects extend beyond India and the US. Other countries observing this move might reconsider their own trade dependencies, particularly in the pharmaceutical sector. For Europe, while this policy does not directly target its medicines, it signals potential volatility in global drug trade norms. It also highlights how interconnected the pharmaceutical supply chain has become, where a tariff in one country can have pricing and availability consequences far beyond its borders. This measure is not just a tax policy change. It is a geopolitical and economic signal that could shape the global medicines market for years to come. The imposition of new tariffs on US-made medicines by India has set off a chain reaction across the global pharmaceutical supply chain, disrupting a delicate network that moves drugs from manufacturing plants to patients' hands. Pharmaceuticals are among the most globally interdependent industries. Raw materials, active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, manufacturing facilities, packaging operations, and distribution channels often span multiple continents before a single box of medicine reaches a pharmacy shelf. Any sudden cost change at one point in this network can have ripple effects across the entire system. India plays a dual role in this supply chain. It is not only a massive consumer of pharmaceuticals, but also a key global manufacturing hub for both branded and generic medicines. Many US pharmaceutical companies either manufacture certain drugs in India for export or rely on Indian plants for cost-efficient packaging and final stage processing. When tariffs suddenly increase, these operations face unexpected costs that must be absorbed, passed on to buyers, or offset by supply chain adjustments. This disruption is not confined to the India-US corridor. For instance, a US-made drug imported into India may be repackaged there and then shipped to other regions, including parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, and even Europe. With higher tariffs raising the cost at the Indian stage of the journey, the final price in these secondary markets can also rise. Such changes can alter purchasing decisions for hospitals, wholesalers, and governments in countries far removed from the original trade dispute. Moreover, the pharmaceutical supply chain is tightly time sensitive. Certain drugs have short shelf lives or require strict temperature control through cold chain logistics. Tariff disputes can cause delays in customs clearance as authorities adjust to new tax rules, creating risk that medicines lose viability before reaching their destination. Manufacturers and distributors may have to reroute shipments, find alternative processing locations, or negotiate new supplier contracts to maintain flow, all of which take time and add cost. The disruption also exposes a strategic vulnerability in the global healthcare system. Overconcentration of critical pharmaceutical processes in a handful of countries. As tariffs make specific trade routes less attractive, companies may explore moving production to other nations, diversifying sourcing, or even bringing manufacturing closer to end markets. While such changes could strengthen resilience in the long run, in the short term, they can lead to shortages, erratic pricing, and uncertainty for patients who depend on a steady supply of essential medicines. Europe may not be directly importing large volumes of US medicines from India, but the continent is still vulnerable to the consequences of India's new tariffs. This is because the pharmaceutical market operates like an interconnected web rather than a series of isolated pipelines. India is one of the largest producers and exporters of generic medicines in the world, and it plays a crucial role in global drug formulation and distribution. Even if a European hospital or pharmacy sources a drug from another supplier, there is a significant chance that part of that product's journey, its active ingredients, formulation, or packaging has passed through India's pharmaceutical ecosystem. When India imposes steep tariffs on US-made medicines, it changes not only domestic pricing, but also the dynamics of global supply allocation. Pharmaceutical companies often redirect shipments to where they are most profitable or strategically important. If certain US medicines become more expensive to bring into India, the US might prioritize selling those products to other markets, potentially altering supply volumes and prices in Europe. Similarly, if Indian distributors face higher costs for importing certain drugs, they may shift focus toward European buyers for locally manufactured alternatives, which could change the pricing structure here as well. European health systems are particularly sensitive to such shifts because many operate under fixed public health budgets. A sudden change in global drug prices forces procurement agencies and national health services to adjust spending plans, sometimes delaying new drug approvals or restricting availability of certain high-cost treatments. In some cases, hospitals may need to seek substitute drugs which could be less effective or carry different side effect profiles, impacting patient outcomes. There is also a psychological element to consider. Policy moves like India's tariffs send a signal to global markets that the pharmaceutical sector is not immune to trade politics. This can influence how European policymakers, investors, and healthcare planners think about long-term supply chain security. It may accelerate discussions around increasing local manufacturing capacity within the EU, diversifying suppliers, and investing in strategic stockpiles of essential medicines. For patients and advocacy groups, even indirect effects can feel immediate. Rising prices, limited availability of niche drugs, and increased competition for generics all contribute to public concern. Europe's interconnectedness with the global pharmaceutical supply chain means that while the shock may originate thousands of miles away, its aftershocks can be felt in clinics, pharmacies, and policy debates across the continent. India's decision to impose heavy tariffs on US-made medicines has not only economic implications, but also significant diplomatic repercussions. Trade between nations is never purely about goods and services. It is a reflection of political relationships, strategic priorities, and negotiation leverage. By targeting an industry as vital as pharmaceuticals, India has inserted itself into a high-stakes arena where health security intersects with trade policy. The United States, as one of the world's largest exporters of branded and patented medicines, views such measures as both a commercial setback and a potential challenge to its broader trade influence. This naturally leads to heightened tensions in diplomatic exchanges. The U.S. response is likely to combine public statements of concern with behind-the-scenes negotiations. Officials may argue that tariffs on essential medicines could harm patients and disrupt global health care. At the same time, they may use trade talks, bilateral agreements, or even World Trade Organization (WTO) mechanisms to challenge the move. For Washington, the pharmaceutical sector is not only an economic powerhouse, but also a symbol of American innovation. So defending its market access becomes a matter of national interest. Europe, while not a direct party to the tariff dispute, has a vested interest in monitoring these developments closely. European governments, pharmaceutical companies, and trade bodies understand that escalating tensions between two major economies can trigger broader instability in international trade rules. If disputes over pharmaceuticals intensify, they could spill into other sectors, affecting everything from medical devices to agricultural exports. For Europe, maintaining an open and rules-based global trading system is essential, especially in industries tied to public health. India's stance also reflects its desire to assert economic sovereignty and negotiate from a position of strength. By signaling that it is willing to impose significant costs on imports from a global superpower, India positions itself as a confident player in international trade politics. This resonates with domestic audiences who view such moves as a defense of national industry and self-reliance. In this complex web of interest, diplomacy becomes a balancing act. The challenge for all involved is to address trade disagreements without compromising global access to life-saving medicines. Behind closed doors, negotiators will weigh the benefits of maintaining hardline positions against the potential cost of strained relations. Publicly, each side will frame its actions as protecting its own people and industries, but beneath the surface, the real objective will be to preserve influence, market stability, and a favorable position in the next round of global trade negotiations. For Europe, India's tariff hike on US-made medicines could open the door to new opportunities in pharmaceutical production and sourcing. And while the immediate reaction worldwide has been concerned over supply chain disruptions and higher prices, strategic thinkers see this as a moment to reevaluate dependency on a few dominant suppliers. Europe, with its strong research infrastructure, regulatory standards, and advanced manufacturing capabilities, is well positioned to step in and fill potential gaps in global medicine supply. One of the most immediate opportunities lies in localizing production. Many European pharmaceutical companies already manufacture high-quality generic and branded medicines, but global competition and cost pressures have often pushed large-scale production to countries like India. If tariffs in India make certain drugs less accessible or more expensive for other markets, European producers could gain an advantage by offering competitive alternatives without the added tariff burden. This could encourage investments in expanding production facilities across EU member states, especially in regions with lower operational costs but high technical expertise. Another avenue is the diversification of supply partnerships. European nations could strengthen pharmaceutical ties with countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America that are looking to grow their own manufacturing bases. By spreading sourcing across multiple partners, Europe reduces the risk of being affected by any one country's trade policy changes. Such diversification also enhances resilience during future crises, whether economic, political, or health. There is also the potential for innovation-led solutions. Higher global prices for certain medicines may push European biotech firms and research institutions to develop alternative formulations, biosimilars, or even new delivery methods that bypass existing supply bottlenecks. For example, a patented US drug hit with tariffs in India could be replaced in some markets by a European-developed alternative if regulatory approvals are secured quickly. This not only strengthens Europe's competitiveness, but also reinforces its role as a global health leader. Beyond economics, the situation offers a chance for Europe to champion equitable access to medicines on the world stage. By presenting itself as a stable, transparent, and reliable partner, Europe could attract trust from nations seeking dependable supply chains. Such positioning would not only benefit trade, but also bolster Europe's diplomatic influence in global health governance. What appears as a disruption today could for Europe be a catalyst for building a more self-reliant, innovative, and globally connected pharmaceutical sector. The global reaction to India's decision to impose high tariffs on US-made medicines has been swift and diverse, reflecting the interconnected nature of modern healthcare and trade. Financial markets were among the first to respond, with shares of certain US pharmaceutical giants experiencing short-term volatility. Investors worried about the potential loss of market share in India, one of the fastest growing medicine markets in the world. Indian pharmaceutical companies also saw mixed impacts. While some anticipated benefits from reduced foreign competition, others feared disruptions in collaborative ventures with US firms. International health agencies and non-governmental organizations expressed concern over the policy's possible effects on medicine accessibility. Groups focused on global health equity warned that price increases could limit the availability of certain life-saving drugs, particularly advanced treatments for cancer, cardiovascular disease, and rare conditions for patients in lower-income countries who rely on Indian distributors to source affordable medicines. This change could mean delays or complete unavailability of critical treatments. Diplomatic reactions were measured but pointed. U.S. officials voiced their disappointment and signaled an intent to address the issue through trade negotiations, emphasizing the importance of open markets for essential healthcare goods. Meanwhile, other major economies, including several in Europe, refrained from direct criticism but made it clear they were watching closely. Many policymakers recognized that this move could set precedent for using healthcare products as leverage in trade disputes, a path that could destabilize already fragile supply chains. In the business community, pharmaceutical executives began reassessing their strategies for the Indian market. Some considered increasing local manufacturing in India to bypass tariffs, while others explored shifting focus to alternative growth regions. Logistics providers, too, started recalculating routes and timelines to accommodate possible bottlenecks at Indian ports if the tariff measure leads to increased regulatory scrutiny. Public sentiment varied by region. In India, some citizens supported the policy as a means to boost domestic industry and reduce dependency on imports, aligning with broader economic self-reliance goals. In contrast, patient advocacy groups inside and outside India highlighted the human cost of restricted access and higher prices, calling for exemptions for certain essential medicines. Overall, the global reaction was not just about trade or economics. It was a reminder of how deeply intertwined healthcare and international politics have become. Markets, policymakers, and advocacy groups alike recognize that decisions affecting drug prices in one country can quickly trigger a chain of responses across countries. In closing, the situation surrounding India's tax bomb on U.S. medicines is far more than a headline. It is a vivid example of how one policy decision can send shockwaves through global trade, healthcare systems, and diplomatic relations. We have seen how it impacts supply chains, raises questions about medicine accessibility, triggers international political maneuvering, and even opens new opportunities for innovation and local production. For Europe, it is both a warning and a wake-up call. We must prepare for a world where health security and trade policy are increasingly intertwined, where resilience is not optional but essential. This is the moment to strengthen alliances, diversify supply chains, and champion fair, transparent, and cooperative global health policies. To everyone listening, whether you are a policymaker, a business leader, a healthcare worker, or simply a concerned citizen, remember that challenges are also opportunities. The way we respond now will shape the future of healthcare access for millions. Let us act with vision, with courage, and with a determination to make the global system stronger than before. I wish you all the very best in your efforts to innovate, collaborate, and lead in this evolving landscape. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your commitment to building a healthier, more resilient world. Good luck, and may your work inspire progress far beyond these walls.